Well, hello everyone, and as all of you know, I really dislike teaching and talking about grammar. Instead, in my videos, I like to focus a lot on pronunciation tips, things that help us reduce accent and help us to have a better general understanding of American English pronunciation, which is why I thought in this video I'd talk a little bit about one of the biggest changes in English pronunciation. And that's the Great Vowel Shift. Sometimes it's abbreviated as GVS. Now, the Great Vowel Shift really began around the 15th century, around the time of Chaucer. Now, it should be understood that although this change was very big and it was quite dramatic, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't that up until some date we started pronouncing vowels one way and then at a certain date we just changed. It was a gradual shift. It took place over about a 100 or 200 year span of time, but it was quite noticeable quite quickly. Now, what is the Great Vowel Shift? How would we summarize it or define it? Well, really, what it did is it affected the pronunciation of long vowels. Short vowels were unaffected. Before the Great Vowel Shift, we pronounced vowels using the front of the mouth. Then over a period of time, we started to pronounce long vowels, or also called tense vowels, with the back of our mouth. For example, the word house, as we know it now, was pronounced as hoose in Old English. The word mode, as we know it now, used to be pronounced as mood, and so on. Now, we might ask the question, well, how do we know that, since we didn't have recordings of how words were pronounced in Old English before the Great Vowel Shift? Well, in short, we don't know with 100% certainty, but linguists really rely on a lot of supposition when coming to these conclusions. Now, how do we know that? Well, we come to those conclusions based on the way words were spelled. We look at letters. We even looked at the way songs were written. Also, we looked at misspellings of words, because oftentimes the misspelling of a word would betray the phonetic pronunciation of a word. So that really helps us to draw certain conclusions on the way certain words were spoken before and after the Great Vowel Shift. Now we might ask the question, well, why did this happen? Why did the Great Vowel Shift occur? Well, there's no one specific reason as to why the Great Vowel Shift started and why it stopped. There are a few different theories as to why it happened. One theory is that after the Black Plague, people moved from southern England and moved over to the east, the eastern part of England, which would have blended dialects and cultures, which would have affected pronunciation. Now, one of the major theories is the change in English rule by French people. Now, after a certain period of time in the 15th century, the English were no longer ruled by French-speaking rulers, and so in an attempt to change the way that their vowels were pronounced to mirror that more of French, which sounded more like Old English, we changed the way our long vowels were pronounced, and in order to differentiate the way we spoke our long vowels as opposed to French. And this is probably the theory that has the most traction. There are other ideas as well. One other idea is that some highly influential rulers maybe had speech impediments or they mispronounced words. Now, that particular theory doesn't really hold a lot of water, but it is a theory nonetheless. Now, it should also be noted, too, that English isn't the only language that went through a spelling change or a vowel change. It happened in German, Latin, Italian, and French, and also in Spanish. So this might also help us to account for all of those strange spellings in English that make learning English so difficult for a lot of non-native speakers. So I hope this information on the Great Vowel Shift has been informative to you and you found it interesting. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you in the next video.